Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. So glad to see so many of you here in the room with us already. We encourage you to connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On YouTube, subscribe to our channel at Grade Level Reading. On LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, follow us at Campaign for GLR. And on X, follow us at Reading by Third. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to share anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to reshare. We encourage you to post any questions, reflections, or observations on social media. Once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce the conversation. Before we start, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our enterprise and programmatic funders, as well as our individual donors. Your support not only allows us to hold these vital conversations, but also helps us create meaningful opportunities to share insights, foster connections, and build the CGLR community. I also want to give special thank you to our Leo sustaining sponsors who you can see on this screen here. Thank you to all of these wonderful foundations for making these Learning Tuesdays conversations possible. As we get started, I have just a few housekeeping details to share with you. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select everyone so that we all know who is here, and feel free to share your thoughts and insights throughout the duration of the webinar. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last portion of the webinar to respond to the questions you post. The webinar is also being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. A link to the recording, as well as all slides, bios, and resources, will be sent in a follow-up email to all who registered. And lastly, we will be having a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This poll helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Also, before we start, I would just like to take a moment to share some of our upcoming webinars through the month of December. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we have an exciting session in partnership with Attendance Works that will discuss cross-sector strategies and approaches to reduce health-related absences with a panel of health and organizational experts. Next week on the 16th, we hope you'll join us for our final live webinar before we jump into our holiday rebroadcasts. This session will be co-sponsored with Thomas B. Fordham Institute on reaching their full potential, plugging the leaky pipeline for high-achieving, low-income students. And as I mentioned, through the end of December and the first week of January, we will be having special holiday rebroadcasts, which will take place on our YouTube channel. These sessions will be launched every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel, but the link to register will be dropped in the chat box now, along with all of the links for the other sessions. I did also want to give a brief reminder that our next Crucible of Practice Salon within this series will be on January 13th from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we hope you'll save the date and join us again in January. And lastly, before we jump in to our conversation today, I just wanted to give a brief reminder and heads up that our Decoding NAEP report will be launching soon. This report examines what the 2024 NAEP results reveal about boosting achievement and closing gaps with the hope of inspiring bold, sustained action for children. So keep an eye on your email and for more information from us there, but we will be launching this exciting report soon. And joining you now for today's conversation is Jenny Atkinson with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Sierra, and I'm really happy to welcome all of you to today's Crucible of Practice Salon, Building Continuity, Sustaining Community Coalitions During Leadership Transitions. It's great to see so many of you here with us, and I want to reiterate what Sierra had to say. We really do look forward to seeing your questions in the chat, as well as we'd love to hear of any insights and experience that you have on this topic as we go through the conversation today. Preparing for and going through leadership transitions in a proactive way is such a critical aspect to the work that our Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities do across the network. Partnering in coalition with other organizations, networks, and agencies, there are plenty of opportunities to actively work through leadership changes, and these transitions bring openings for positive change, a need for core stability throughout, and the possibility of real peril if not managed skillfully. We wanted to learn today with and from two long-time grade level reading communities that also have the support of a community, a campaign for grade level reading state lead. State leads provide support to communities in some states in a range of ways that help build continuity, and we're excited to explore those ways that they support as well today. We have a fantastic group of panelists with us for this conversation. They include Malai Amfar, who's the Senior Program Officer of Constituency Outreach and Engagement with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. She also serves as the Iowa State Lead for the campaign. Josie Manternock, who is the Program Officer with the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque in Iowa. Marissa Smith, the Family Leadership and Literacy Liaison with Wake Up and Read in North Carolina. And Teresa Stacker, the Executive Director at the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation, the lead organization for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in North Carolina. We're so thrilled to have all of these presenters with us, and you can read more about them in the biodoc that I will post in the chat momentarily. So we're going to start today with Teresa, who brings over 20 years of experience in North Carolina's early childhood system to the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation to grow the impact and reach of their organization and their mission to support thriving young children and families. She's worked in military child care community, provided technical assistance and professional development to the child care workforce, and spent most of her recent years in state government advising on early care and education. One of the many things the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation does is support a range of Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities throughout North Carolina. Teresa, can you provide us with some more information about that role, how you support communities, particularly with transitions, as well as your experience in your own organization as a fairly new executive director?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning to some. So glad to be here with you all. Thank you so much for having me. It is definitely an honor to be here with you and share in this discussion. Again, my name is Teresa Stacker, and I'm with the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. A little bit about our organization. Our vision at NCECF is that each child in North Carolina has a strong foundation for lifelong health, education, and well-being. And this is all supported by a comprehensive and equitable care and education system from prenatal through third grade. So we believe that this change happens through that coordinated action across communities. We help improve the health, education, and well-being of North Carolina's children from birth to age 8 and their families by promoting understanding and uplifting community and family voice to guide decision-making, by spearheading collaboration through convening state, local health, education, business leaders and policymakers to build that strong alignment across the early childhood spectrum. And lastly, we provide policy analysis, resources, and data to help inspire innovation and action for change. So we've been privileged, I would say, since 2015 to serve as the state lead for the campaign in North Carolina. And our role as a state lead includes building the capacity of our communities, to help form those strong and lasting collaborations, to help them achieve measurable outcomes. And we do this through creating and sustaining learning communities to share best practices, data, and resources. We develop adaptable tools for our communities to promote understanding of that birth through 8 child development and the importance of grade level reading. And also, we help support our communities in successfully moving their partners that they work with from being informed to being engaged and active in their campaign. So some of the other activities and supports that we provide is really illustrating the value of our Pathways to Grade Level Reading work through the campaign, through that lens, and blending our Science of Reading work into the North Carolina campaign. We also publish like annual summer learning toolkits for camp counselors and provide supports to provide supports to children and their communities. We lead a community of practice in North Carolina, and we also work with hosting an annual meeting with our campaign. When possible, we create small grants for our communities that they can use to help continue their work. And if we can't provide those grants, we also will work with other funders to help with those different opportunities. We've noticed in North Carolina, and I'm sure in a lot of other states, that there's been a large number of organizations that have faced a lot of turnover recently. And of course, as you see, I'm here for a year and a half now. Our organization is one of those. And I've been very lucky that the staff that we have at NCECF has remained the same, other than myself. So they have been able to continue the work that we've been doing with our other leaders that we have. So this has really given me, as the executive director, time to learn more about our role and then also take the time to glean from other states and see how we can improve and enhance what we do as an organization. Currently in North Carolina, we have 12 active communities, community collaborators across the state, and at one point we had 14. So we do know that we've had turnover, and I know we've got some folks here from North Carolina too that can talk about that more, but it has been somewhat difficult to kind of keep some of these organizations going in these communities. The ones that we have now they're chugging along and they're doing such a great job. And it just really has allowed us the opportunity to lean on each other and learn from each other and really make sure that we uplift each other and keep each other engaged through these different transitions.
Hello, I was muted, so sorry. Thank you, Teresa, so much for that overview of the great work happening in North Carolina. Really appreciate it. And we're going to now turn to Marissa Smith, who is with Wake Up and Read. She's been there since 2022. And prior to that, she worked in the Wake County public school system as a teacher, as well as in elementary school, as well as a reading interventionist, an instructional facilitator, and an academic instructional coach. So a little bit of everything. And she brings a real wealth of experience to her work. Marissa, can you let us know more about the work of Wake Up and Read and talk a little bit about the ways leadership transition has played out in Wake County?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Wake Up and Read is a coalition made up of 30 cross-sector agencies. We are located here in Raleigh, the capital of North Carolina. And Wake County Public Schools, one of the largest school districts in the nation, is our backbone agency. And of course, we have the support of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation to accomplish much of our work. We focus on three major pillars outside of school time learning, school readiness, and engaged families as partners. And because there's so much collective work, any changes in leadership at any level could completely change the way we do business. And with that being said, since 2023, we've experienced several major leadership transitions, both within our core team, with our administrator, our director, as well as within the Wake County Public School System. So there are four ways that we have really helped to maintain, that have really helped us to maintain continuity during these transitions. So if you go to the next slide, please. The first being just remaining true to who we are and why we do what we do, remaining true to our mission. So our mission is to engage and educate our community about the importance of childhood literacy and to increase access for all those that we serve, and providing those literacy resources and opportunities for all children across Wake County. Truly grounding ourselves in that why and that work helps to ensure that our mission guides any other decisions that we might make about the future of Wake Up and Read. And the second strategy is just to help maintain trust with our stakeholders. We've built some really strong relationships, and that has only happened because people trust that Wake Up and Read is going to be there to provide the things that we say, we're going to provide. So, in order to do that, we prioritized communication throughout all the transitions with our superintendent, transitions with our senior director, transition with our administrator inside of our core team. That has helped to kind of reassure all of our stakeholders, everyone from our coalition members to the families that we serve, to, our school district partners and our community partners. Um, we really try to make them feel um, reassure them that, some change is going to be inevitable. There are things that are beyond our control. And so some of the familiar practices, were going to change. But we did try to reassure them that we were committed to maintaining our partnerships and, creating some inclusive collaboration opportunities, hoping that that would come out of whatever changes we might need to make. Um, the next strategy we used is to really take that time to evaluate the effectiveness of our historical initiatives. We have three large initiatives among many. And one of the largest is our Today a Reader, Tomorrow a Leader book drive and summer learning distribution. The next one is our unique learning spaces, community-based literacy outreach. And our third largest initiative is our Raising Readers Parent Leader Network. So we took time just to dive into the data surrounding those three initiatives and figuring out just how effective they were. Um, During that time, it really helped us to take the effort to determine whether each of those have fostered meaningful impact. We examine both the quantitative data to determine if they have been effective, things like how many books are we distributing, how many families are we engaging with, and where, the number of community partners we have, and are we being inclusive with the resources that we have to offer. But this time also gave us the opportunity to diversify some of our data sources, just by including more qualitative metrics, things to help us determine what are some of the root causes of our literacy disparities here in Wake County, and taking into consideration some of the changes of our community, for example, changes in family perception or family practices in the home, how we are supporting our partner schools differently, going beyond the books, going beyond giving them just the books. How are we teaching their families to use those resources? How are we getting kids excited about reading overall? And then the types of community partners we're engaging with have really helped us to make early childhood literacy a priority. And then finally, we took a look at how could we be more robust and intentional about those key initiatives. We made a decision to invest our time and resources in really going deeper, rescaling our most impactful initiatives and letting go of a few others, researching who else should be at our table, who could help support the work in a more meaningful way, and really working to expand our networks. We really wanted to learn more. Although we felt like we had some great historical practices, we really wanted to learn what other campaign communities were doing in the way of innovation and what new practices we might take on that might help better support the learning outcomes that we wanted to see for students in this area. Um, We've been inviting more diverse community partners, both into our steering committee as well as our action teams to help guide the work. People with lived experiences, people who could support the work in different ways. We have increased the number of schools that we support and how we support them, realizing that our core team's capacity is extremely limited. We're a small but mighty team of five. So, needless to say, we rely heavily on volunteers and our community partners and our backbone agency. We've asked administrators to designate a school coordinator to work closely with us so that we're able to be a part of more of the school improvement planning and how the initiatives are planned from the beginning of the year to the end. So going beyond just providing books for summer learning, but how could we support them differently throughout the year? So things like co-creating professional development for their staff and family engagement efforts. And we've really done some strategic outreach in students' neighborhoods. So, thinking about where each of the students is coming from and where can we go and support them outside of the school day, helping to learn alongside their families and those community partners that engage with them day in and day out. And we've been adjusting the structure of our Raising Reader Parent Leader Network to include more learning time with the families each month, and more dedication to the science of reading, as well as the opportunity to hear from some of those community resources that the community partners that can provide other resources that truly impact reading and learning overall. Those folks that provide SEL services and teach us how to use technology more effectively or provide positive parenting support or special education insight. You name it. We've tried to really reach out to expand that community partner base. So I really feel like those four strategies have really helped us maintain continuity throughout all the many transitions we've experienced over the last, 2 or 3 years.
Thank you so much, Marissa. That really provides a lot of insight into the amazing work you're doing, as well as like you said, the ways that these strategies can help that continuity happen. I have making my list already of questions for you, of how you're doing some of that great work. So thank you. And we're gonna now turn to Iowa. Specifically, we're heading to the Greater Dubuque area, and I want to welcome Josie Manternock, who is with the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque. As the foundation's program officer, she oversees a lot of the foundation's work to support education and well-being of children close to her small town and across the 7-county Dubuque region. This work includes the Every Child Reads and Rural Teacher Corps initiatives. And prior to this role, Josie taught in schools across the country. Josie, we'd love to hear about your work with the foundation and how you're involved in supporting the work throughout the Greater Dubuque region.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Jenny. So good afternoon, everyone, and I really appreciate everyone who logged on today. So as Jenny said, my name is Josie Modernock, and I'm the program officer here at the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque, where we are running the Every Child Reads initiative. And with that work in my program officer role, we're also part of the Rural Schools Collaborative, working on rural teacher retention as part of that. So I'm going to share a little of the impact of our work here in Dubuque. how that work really extends into smaller communities throughout our region, and then discuss the leadership transitions that we've had amongst our initiative and how Malai has been great help with those transitions as well. So at its core, our Every Child Reads initiative is really driven by the belief that every child deserves the opportunity to become a confident, successful reader, regardless of their background, income, or zip code. So Dubuque is actually one of the founding communities of the campaign. We launched in 2012. We have 4 focus areas: school readiness, summer learning, school attendance, and access to books. So here in the Dubuque region, our work focuses on meeting the children where they are, both in schools and in our community. So we partner closely with our local school districts, teachers, families, and really our nonprofits throughout the community to provide that early literacy support through a variety of programming. So just for example, really quick, like one of our big programs with access to books, we have a Title I book fair. Through this initiative, we partner with our Title I schools to host free book fairs for students who may not otherwise be able to purchase books. So instead of relying on families to buy those books, during conferences and that book fair season, we ensure every child gets to choose and take home books at no cost to them. We also have a dyslexia tutoring program where we have provided funding to get individuals trained in dyslexia tutoring, which before 2024, there was no dyslexia tutors in Dubuque. And we now have 24 trained tutors in the community. And we also provide scholarships for students who otherwise would not be able to receive that tutoring due to the cost. So that's just a little bit of a small glimpse of what we're doing throughout our campaign currently. And while Dubuque is a central part of our work, as Jenny mentioned, we serve at the Community Foundation a 7-county region. So our mission also extends into smaller and rural communities throughout the region. So in our unique role of serving a 7-county region, these counties, like I said, are rural and often face unique challenges. As many of you know, fewer resources, limited access to programming, transportation barriers, smaller school staffs, and the list goes on. But we know the need in these communities is just as great as it is in our bigger community of Dubuque. So what we have done is we've taken the work that we started here in Dubuque and shared that with our other counties that we serve, and we serve as the backbone organization to these counties. So 3 of those counties have started their own umbrellas of Every Child Reads. And what we've done is we've hired an Every Child Reads coordinator to run the initiative in that county. And amongst those 3, one of those just celebrated their 10-year anniversary last month, and the other 2 are not far behind. So we have great work happening. And just to share some of the impactful efforts happening in these smaller counties, they all have their own summer reading fund programs. Most recently, one of those counties, the last summer, had 78 kindergarten through 2nd grade students participate in their programming. And over the course of the summer, these students got received targeted reading support, access to books, and encouragement to keep learning outside of the school year. And they saw a 5.2% improvement in reading skills. So while, that number may be sounds small at first glance, but we know how important and big that is. And the work that these coordinators is doing in these rural communities is so important. So transitioning to kind of the leadership piece of this, I am newer in my role. I've been in it a year and a half now, but I was also on maternity leave for 3 of those months. So Malai, who will be presenting after this, after me, and she serves as our state of Iowa lead, and she has been very valuable professional resource to me in this work. So really her leadership, experience, guidance have contributed significantly to my understanding of not only just our statewide efforts, but also our local efforts, and have strengthened my ability to effectively support our region and our local programming. So when I began just a year and a half ago, Becky Miles Poco, which some of you may know was in Malai's role, which was also a transition. We would have monthly calls, and this is where I understood better the history of our initiative. Being the only one in my office focusing on this campaign and our education efforts, I really soaked up all her knowledge, which I know she was with our campaign from the beginning and asked all the questions, what we've done, where we need to go. Other things I did was right away the meeting with our local partners. As I mentioned, other nonprofits, the school district are our biggest partners in building that trust within the transition of my role. So even the second week I was here, we have a summer learning cooperative was meeting. And before that meeting, I scheduled a meeting with our district elementary curriculum director to better understand, what was I walking into with this summer learning cooperative, the history of our cooperative, and where she would want it to go to really build that trust with her as well. So in addition to taking on many opportunities, I would say throughout the community to be really visible in that first year to show we are staying true to our mission of our campaign, even through the transition. And we were going to keep on going with me being new to the role and having transitions before me as well. So lastly, what I do to assist our county Every Child Reads coordinator. So like I said, we have 3 county coordinators, is we serve as the back office. In our office here at the Community Foundation, we have someone who focuses purely on data. We have the finance, and we have, myself and others, our impact team. And we're here as a constant point of contact for those Every Child Reads coordinators, specifically me, myself, how they can carry out their programming. So basically what Malai is to me, I kind of be for them, having regular monthly calls with each coordinator. I try to do once a year gatherings in person where we can talk about our initiatives, goals as a group, and where we want to go. And I'm there to support them throughout their events. And like I said, being that back office, we have the person if they need data collection, if they need finance help, etc. So really, altogether, the transition has shown me how interconnected our communities really are. And at the end of the day, how a child's success is shaped not only by those teachers in the classroom, but families, access to books, the community support from our nonprofits, and keeping our mission alive through all of these transitions.
Excuse me. Thanks so much, Josie, for that overview and description of ways that you're dealing with transition. I especially love what you said about staying visible. I think a lot of times when someone's new, like they think, oh, I've got to get in the office. I've got to make sure I know what I'm doing myself. And in this type of work, the most important thing really in many ways is to make sure you're out there where everyone can see who you are and know that you're still there and a part of the work. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're going to turn to Malai. You've been hearing a little bit about her from Josie, and I know many of you know Malai very well, but I would still like to introduce her for those 1 or 2 maybe who don't know Malai. She serves as a state lead in Iowa, which is only one of her many roles as the senior program officer with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Malai supports communities throughout the network and has helped many through a wide range of leadership transitions. She brings her previous experience as a community lead to this work as well. And so I was so happy when Malai said she would be a part of this conversation because I know she's just going to bring at so many levels insights into this kind of work. So Malai, we'd love to hear a little bit about those insights as well in the work in general, both in Iowa as well as throughout the network.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenny. And thanks, Josie, for all the nice things you said. I really appreciate you. I just want to lift up to some of the things that Josie said. I will just repeat that we had a lot of change in a very short amount of time within the state of Iowa. And so the approach that Josie takes is extremely helpful to me in supporting the full state because she is taking a regional approach. So some of the things that I will share within these next slides are going to be echoed in what she said in the ways that she does things. So her support helps our Iowa teams all thrive collectively. So as you can see here on the map, the purple stars are the ones where we had turnover. Not to mention the fact that Josie said that we had a state lead role turnover as well. So we had a lot of very abrupt change in 2022. And I kind of added to that as well because I was a community lead for Ames, Iowa, which is in the center. And then I transitioned to this role, which meant that there had to be a change for who is managing Story County Reads as well. So as you can see on this map, lots of change. We do have 15 CGLR communities in Iowa. The purple stars are the ones where there was some sort of change in the leadership with the coalition. So that's a lot. That's over half of where there was some sort of transition or change. The orange stars are where there was not an abrupt change, but I will say that there was still change at the coalition level, either with a change in superintendent or a key leadership change within a partner that impacted. So really, if I were to color this map and the amount of change that happened within each coalition, it would all be purple. And I think that's just really a lot of evidence of the nature of this work, that there will be change. So when there is dramatic change, I really root myself in two things. One is empathy for the status of each coalition as being a part of a larger system. So I use that lean of empathy in every conversation that I have, whether it be with a community lead in Iowa or within our larger CGLR network. What this means is that I examine the conditions of the coalition alongside the members of whoever is in that coalition role. So that might mean the new community lead. That might mean a team of people that I'm responding to. But it really boils down to having a clear understanding of what the supports are that they need to have, whether it be from me as a state lead for Iowa or from me from the campaign lens. So what is the capacity that they need to have from me? What is the support that they need from me as the state lead from Iowa to impact and influence the rate of change they wish to see within their local work? So that's one, empathy. Two is the idea that change isn't necessarily a bad thing. As Marissa said, it's an opportunity. It's a hard stop and an opportunity to really examine and assess and evaluate what's been going on. I know that within this work, we get super caught up in the daily of what needs to happen. And there is sometimes very little time to pause and think about what needs to happen, what should happen to make greater impact, because we're always going through the motion of what is in the daily. So when there is an abrupt change in leadership, it is an invitation to take a stop, to take a look at the data, what is driving the community work, what needs to stay, what needs to go, what are the pieces that we really don't want to lose at all. And so this is the type of thing that I invite in my conversation with my community leads, where there has been some kind of a change, is really that assessment, full body assessment of what's going on within the coalition and what are the pieces that we want to keep, what are the pieces that we want to maybe drop or shed or put a pause on. Because that's your invitation, is the change of what's happened. You don't have to do things the way that they've always been done. It's a very clear invitation to take a look at those relationships and to look at overall what is the mini system and who are those actors and players and what needs to change. Sierra, could you transition to the next slide? So I have 4 actions that I kind of lean on when I have a conversation with a new community lead, whether this be in Iowa or elsewhere. So the first one is listening. I love this quote from Dr. Sade Harris, whom I picked this quote up from, which is, engagement begins with your ears and not your mouth. So that means just stop talking for a second and listen to what your community leaders and your community coalition members are telling you. I feel that Josie mentioned this when she talks about how she goes into the school districts and really wants to learn from them. And that's what this is about. This means listening to the perspective of your new leader, but also when there is an abrupt change, listening to your community as well. What are those pieces that you need to understand? This is not a time to talk. This is a time to listen and to seek to understand what is the nature of things happening within the local work, and also what are the things that people are maybe wanting to shed, what are the things that they're wanting to keep, so that you can build into that second step, which is an awareness. Awareness, what that means to me is having that conversation to explore what are the things that you can provide. So if you are a community lead and you're going into that conversation with the superintendent, this is where you explore together what are the things that you can do, what are the benefits that you can have and offer to the coalition. So for me as a state lead, or for me from the campaign lens, I go into the conversation about what are the things that I can offer to that community lead or to that coalition work. What are the things that I have that we can work on together and explore things together? So that is where there's a piece of education and awareness. But the key word is together, is that we're wanting to do this in a co-creative way so that you can be a benefit to one another. For the community lead, also for the community nonprofit, what is the benefit of being a part of the coalition? Since I know we're talking about change in leadership, that means all kinds of roles within the actors of your system. It could be the transition in community lead. It could be the transition of maybe an executive director who is a key partner. It could be a transition in school leadership or whomever you're working with. So really, this is the awareness part. This is about understanding what you can bring to the table and where you can work together. So that leads to the third piece, which is those opportunities. How are ways that we can stay engaged with each other to ensure that the pace of the work doesn't slow down? So is this face-to-face meetings? Is this virtual meetings on a regular basis? You know, what is the frequency of email communication that people are wanting to see from you as the new person, or from maybe you're wanting to understand that if the new person has changed and you're still in the same role? What is the frequency and rate or opportunities that you can act upon to ensure that the work does not slow down? And then that last piece is reflection. So that means building in natural feedback loops to ensure that the expectations are not dropped. So sometimes what happens when there is an abrupt change is that it can be very easy to lean into, oh my gosh, what do we do now? So here's where you answer that. It's the reflection component. So how are ways that you can build in natural feedback loops, whether that be, a timer on your calendar to reach out to people on a regular basis just to check in, whether that be surveys that you're doing, whether that be, frequent conversation or whatever that you've explored in the opportunities component. What are the pieces that you need to do to constantly have that feedback loop built in? So if you could go to the next slide, Sierra. Okay, I just want to level set one thing, and we're going to transition to a more broader thing, which is that CGLR, so my role, my hat with the campaign is broad. It includes more than just Iowa. So all the little stars that you see are also other communities that I'm supporting in my work. And the community lead role has changed so many times. I did not have time to color the stars where we have seen a change in leadership in other communities, but it is pretty big, quite honestly. There have been a lot of transition. And again, I think that speaks to what I said initially, which is that is just the nature of the work. We have nonprofits, we have funding changes, we have just a lot of frequency in the changes of conditions. And so that leads to a lot of change in leadership overall. So Sierra, one more slide I want to share. This should look familiar. These are the same techniques that I use on a broader scale. So for the campaign work that I do in supporting all of the little stars beyond Iowa, it's really the same. It's on a broader scale that I do. So I use listening, I use awareness, I explore opportunities with the community lead, and then I also offer some reflection, time for us to look at that together. One more slide, and then I'll have Jenny just say a few words, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what this is.
Sure. Yeah, I was hoping that Malai would talk about this Peer Circles initiative that she has brought to the work and support of community leads throughout the network. It's wonderful way, I think, really that communities are learning from each other and getting support from Malai. So I just wanted to make sure she could talk a little bit about this in the context of the work that she's doing with communities around the network.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So I really strongly feel and I have always felt this because I was a community lead for about 5 years and I knew about the campaign before I stepped into the role of supporting the communities. I really strongly believe in the idea of peer relationship, and that is the secret sauce of CGLR is our network. So if you really look at this map and you see all of the stars there, there's a real opportunity here for communities to learn from one another in a pretty formalized way. And I had a strong feeling that no more better opportunity to do that when there's some sort of a change in transition that opens the door for communication. So the Peer Circle program is something that I launched 6 months ago. It's still kind of officially in the pilot stage since I'm assessing how we're doing. But if you look at all the pins that are on the map, it represents a community that is participating in the peer circles. So for Iowa, we do have 3 communities that are participating in this program. And then more broadly, you can see on the map, we even have Puerto Rico who's participating. And really the criteria here to participate is that they're either a community that is new to the network, or we have a transition where the leadership role has changed, where there may be a new community lead in that role. So what this program is, it's a small group setting. I use small group and large group conversation. So the small group conversation, I have 5 small groups of 3 to 4 people from different communities, and they meet on a regular basis. I do not lord over them and tell them when they need to meet, but they know which month they should have their small group conversation. And they really self-govern who is setting up the Zoom link or the Teams link for that call. What I do is I provide some backbone support with a document conversation guide. The conversation guide helps kind of provide some guardrails around the things that they can talk about, but really anything's game. The idea here is that the small groups, what they're doing in the small groups is creating some relationship, safe space for each other, rooted in how they are similar in the ways that they're doing the work. So that might mean that they're similarly sized in terms of the demographics of their community, or they might have some kind of a similarity, they might have some kind of a similarity in the backbone organization that they represent. So an example is that I have a small group of 3 people who are all from United Way. These are leaders who transitioned into their roles as a community lead, but they all work for United Way, and I think all of them are the only person who's doing work in the education space, and they were all new to their role. And so with that came a lot of place of conversation where they're like, oh, hey, I experienced that too. Hey, I experienced that too. And they really flush out these things rooted once again in empathy, which I'm a strong believer that I think that is a key way to help things go as far as trust and understanding different strategies. So with this matching 17 individuals, 17 communities, we've been able to flush out lots of different strategies. I said I use small group and large groups. So on the months that are alternate of the small group conversations are large group conversations where we come together as one full group of 17 people and we go through some of the ideas that were shared. We flush out some strategies. We flush out what is the next topic that we want to take on in the next set of calls. And that's how we've been flowing. And so I'm really encouraged by this program. I have a heart for this program. And I'm excited that we're going to continue it in 2026 and bring on a second cohort of roughly 15 individuals. And I'm kind of thinking through, Josie is in this program. So this is going to be new to her, but in January, Josie, we're going to talk about how can we then blend the 2 cohorts together. And there'll be some surveying and feedback loops that I implement in January so that I can make sure that I've got the formula just right. But this is what Peer Circles is. And we also talk about the different priority areas of the campaign. So this is a nice testing ground for communities to learn from one another about the different pieces of the work that are offered through the campaign.
Thank you so much, Malai. overview of many multiple things. We're going to turn now to our panel discussion. And before I do that, I just want to say again, please, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box so we can turn to those a little bit later in the conversation. And really, even more importantly, I see a lot of you guys in the chat, and I know you all have some experience with these leadership transitions and turnovers too. So we would love to, as I'm asking questions of the panelists, if you have insights or comments on any of the questions that we're discussing, I'd love to see your comments in the chat as well. So please feel free to share anything that you want as well as we're talking. So if we can have all of our panelists come back on camera, we're going to turn to our first question. Hey, everybody. So we've heard a little bit about how transitions at partner organizations impact overall work of coalitions that have shared goals. And I just would love to hear a little bit from each of you about how you've prepared for leadership transition of close-in partners such as a school superintendent or principal or a head librarian at a public library, if that was the opportunity to do that, or if there wasn't, how you dealt with that kind of a transition. Any specifics that you can think of that you'd like to address?
I'll go. One thing I can definitely say for us, it's been trying to get ahead of the shift as much as possible, which is always hard. Sometimes we don't know. It's, hey, guess what? I have a new job and it's in 2 weeks. Luckily with us and some of our partners, we have been able to hear, I'm retiring in a month. So it's like, great, let's start having some of those conversations. So for us as a state lead, just being engaged with our communities is really important, and consistently having those open channels of communication, and also encouraging our communities to do the same with their partners, so that they can, have those open communications. And if there's any time that they can, create an actual plan for transitions, plans on how they can orient new folks, that's what we encourage and we try to do ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Super. Thanks, Teresa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can follow up, Jenny. Luckily, most of our transitions have been planned. We've had, like I said, a change in superintendent. We've had we've just gotten a new chief academic officer. Lots of retirements in some of those higher positions. And so we kind of have had a heads up about the transition. We also have gotten with the libraries being one of our largest partners. They have gotten a new director in the last year. And so, and of course, in those higher positions, things can change pretty quickly and drastically, some substantial changes. And I think what's really helped us is we document everything. We document our impact. We've built some strong relationships with our community. And so often, when the time comes for us to share about Wake Up and Read, or to get some input about changes that might happen, we have things readily available that really share what our work has been about, and what we've achieved and what was necessary, how we've done it, what was necessary to do the things that we've been able to do. And then thankfully, many of our community partners and some of the folks that we work with really advocate for us to maintain that continuity. And so I really feel like that's really how we've been able to kind of ride the tides with all the different changes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so many great points, Marissa, in what you have to say. And I do think counting on, like, sometimes we feel like we have to do it all, but, say you're in a district where there's multiple principals and there's change in one school, then to have some of the other principals that maybe are, able to talk about how important it is to be involved in the coalition is going to be as meaningful or more than to have someone else come in and talk about that. So I think that's a great example. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to second what Marissa said with that documentation component, because that is really important. And that's an important tool that can be utilized in that exploratory conversation. If you're setting an appointment with a new leader, a new partner, or a new community leader, whatever the new person is, whomever that new person might be, just taking a look at what has been done already and really rooting yourself again back in the mission of the coalition. What are we here for? What are the things that we're doing? What are the strategies? What does the data look like all of those things. And you really cannot do that without documentation. And so this provides an opportunity for that exploratory conversation, utilizing that documentation as a tool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Any other thoughts? All right. I know one other thing that I've heard over and over again is the importance of multiple layers in an organization. And so, if you have a partnership with the superintendent, that's great. But when the superintendent changes over, then maybe you've done a lot of preparation for that. Maybe you haven't. Maybe that person is going to have different priorities. And so to have partnerships with principals or teachers, or, you often hear the most important person to know in a school is the custodian or the school secretary, So I think that's something I've also heard often from people is making sure that our partnerships with the organizations we work with are with multiple people in the organization that will help with that continuity in a transition.
Great point, Jenny. I think that builds off of what Teresa said too, with just you've got to be engaged and with more than just one contact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So we just talked a little bit about documentation, but I'm interested in hearing about other strategies for retaining institutional knowledge, as well as like the focus on coalition goals during transitions, the importance of coalition culture during transitions. Any thoughts from people on ways that you have been able to or seen some strategies work for that kind of retaining of knowledge and culture?
Yeah, I can kind of start there, Jenny. I think one of the biggest things when I began was really taking the time to not just jump right in, but taking the time to listen. So like I mentioned before, was we had a summer learning cooperative that we here at the Community Foundation started, the woman that was previously in my role, but I didn't know much of like what they were doing or the history of it. So before they met, I took the time to meet with the librarians individually that were part of the cooperative, to meet with the United Way, to meet with the school district, the Iowa State Extension Office, and learn what the history from their viewpoints of the summer learning cooperative was, what the goals of it, where they would like to see it coming, where they would like to see it go. So that way, at the first time when we all came together, I was driving it in the right direction, and I had somewhat already introduced myself and built that trust of listening to them. And so I think that was the biggest piece for focusing on the goals during the transition, is really listening to the partners that have been part of the history of the campaign for so long, and not just coming in and kind of taking charge there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Josie. And just to add on to that, leaning in and listening, but also like what we do is we make sure we have a space available to keep all that documentation. Documentation is the word of the day, right? So while we're having those community partnerships for anyone in our campaign to be able to look in what we did in the meetings, having all the recordings where they can actually upload your own community plan. So let's say the person left and now you can't have access to their computer. We have all that stuff here for you historically for your community as well as a larger project. So that's just a little piece of something that we can try to do as a state lead.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I think it speaks to sort of the culture, as like we think of the documentation as sort of not a living, it's like the notebook on the shelf. And what you're saying is, no, that's not what it is. We need to keep it alive and not just open the notebook when we come to a transition, but to be talking about it at all times, and everyone be a part of kind of making sure we're documenting and agreeing with what we need to be doing together. Thank you, Teresa. And anyone else on that one? A question?
I'd like to share. So everyone from our steering committee to our volunteers receives onboarding session in their own on their own level. And so the coalition members learn when they come in about the history of Wake Up and Read. We have a governance document that we have co-created. We co-create our goals for each year and we put them all into logic models and we store those things along with all of our meeting minutes and all of that in a Google folder that everyone has access to. All of the steering committee has access to. But then people like our volunteers and, our core team and, other folks that anyone that might be interested, they all receive, a smaller training about, this is who we are, this is why we exist, these are our major initiatives, and those things are posted in our office. They're up and they are constantly changing. We're always reflecting on anything that we might need to change, or we're always asking for feedback, and so those things are live. And then the people that work closely with us are the people that help us create all these things, and so they feel that sense of ownership, and they feel that they have the right to voice when things are going well, and when they'd like to see some changes. So that's been helpful for us to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. Everybody has that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Marissa. So another question that we've touched a little bit on, but I would love to hear a little bit about what you think are best practices or things you've seen work well for communicating about a transition to coalition partners and other stakeholders to help with what, Marissa, you talked about a little, and everyone has, I think, touched on the importance of ensuring continued trust and continuity through these changes.
I'll jump in here, and I would say that you would want to meet with the person before you broadcast anything on social media. I just want to use social media with caution. It's a time to celebrate when there is a transition and opportunity, but I would strongly encourage what my fellow panelists have said is to set that time and space to listen and to learn about, what does the change mean in the community and how will that impact the relationships in the coalition before broadly sharing anything. Coalition work is based on relationship, which can be really delicate balance. So that does mean, kind of going through and having these conversations internally first before exploding on social media or externally and sharing very broadly.
Mm-hmm. I think I can add to that too, off Malai. For us, we always think in all the work that we do, the most or best practices is being like proactive, transparent, consistent in our messaging with our partners and our stakeholders. So, prioritizing that early communication, as Malai said, making sure they're not reading it necessarily in the paper or on social media or through secondhand information, and that they're hearing it directly from us. And we try to do our best to make sure that happens. We clearly share what's changing, what's staying the same, the timeline for any shifts, anything there. And then just continuity, reinforcing our mission through the transition. Things are not going to remain, or what's going to remain unchanged, what roles, structures, etc., is so important with all of this.
Marissa, I remember you talking a little bit about how sometimes the transition time is a time to make some changes, and I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts on how to communicate that in a way for people that maybe are less excited about change, or just the broader coalition as transition as an opportunity to do that. Anything?
I think what really helped us, I'm going to piggyback off the listening that so many of you have talked about. We really had lots of listening sessions, at all levels. Everyone from, our volunteers is sharing feedback. Before our director left, she let everyone know, we had a meeting and we talked about, what was going to stay the same. We didn't focus so much on the fact that a piece was leaving as we did, these are the things that you're familiar with. These are the things that will be there for you still, that kind of thing. And then once she left, we had a clear plan, this is who you call when you need this. This is where you can go to find these resources. We are still going to do XYZ. You can still, get your books or whatever it is. We'll still come to your community site on these dates or whatever the situation may be. So I think just that reassurance was helpful. Not to say that we've done it perfectly. We surely have lots more work to do, but I think that helped us maintain lots of our partnerships.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I
Thank
think
you.
Marissa's bringing up a good point, which is that the work that we do is impacting children and families. And at the end of the day, whether you're a backbone organization or you're a direct service organization, it's going to impact children and families. And so if that is the key core of the communication and that reassurance and ensuring this is where you can pick up your books or this program won't change, or just really thinking about it from the lens of the family who might be relying on those service. I think that is a definite best practice is to, again, it's the empathy thing, like looking at the communication from the lens of somebody who might be receiving that, who is utilizing the service that you're offering.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I think the opposite is true too. Like if someone's coming in and they are changing things a little, to be messaging that like our core goals are still the same. Like the way we want to serve families and kids, even though some of the ways we do it might change, the the what we want to do is not changing, So to keep going back to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that mission is that's those pillars of those strategies, those are your guideposts. Anytime there is some kind of a change, that mission isn't something that would deviate, regardless of transition in an ED or a school district or whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So any other thoughts on helping to keep key partners engaged and motivated, whether before, during, or after transitions? Any examples of how that's worked well or not?
I'll jump in. Marissa mentioned this earlier in one of her responses, but when you have a change in leadership, a lot of times you're going to have change in vision and mission. And also, some of our organizations have a lot of different competing priorities. So, one thing that we've done and thought about as a state lead is as much as we want to push and continue to expand and have more and more communities across North Carolina, we had to stop and realize that we need to lean in with our group that we have. And it's okay to pause and focus on who you have currently as there to support them through their transitions, to say, we're right here with you. What can we do to change? Is there anything different? We try to keep things fresh too. I know I'm like, hey, this state is doing this, you guys. Do you guys want to do that? They're like, Teresa, wait a minute. Hold on. Let's think about it. That might be something cool that we can do. So I really think it's important to circle those supports around who you have in your community and really support them through those transitions and changes, so that then they get to a point where you can then go ahead and move on to new communities and keep expanding and keep adding in, but really just focusing on your group and giving them their all, and just giving everything that you can to them is important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I want to mention a question that came up, and I was answering live, but I was also listening to what Teresa said because I think she was answering the question too that Kimberly had posed, which is about if there's an abrupt change, it's maybe not a pretty change that happened. What do you do with that? Just, I'm paraphrasing the question. And I think really going back to looking that as an opportunity to repairing relationships that maybe have been damaged is an opportunity. It may not feel fun to do, but it is an opportunity to examine the coalition work and co-create with funders to ensure that the priorities are still being met. I think it's an opportunity to revisit and root in the mission, the strategies, and the common agenda, which is children and families. We are all here in the business of trying to support children and families. And if we stay true to that core and really use that opportunity that Kimberly had posed in the question as a space where you can examine that core together, maybe that's a pathway to rebuilding trust, is having a co-created conversation and not try to not be transparent or not try to sidestep what may have happened. You have to openly talk about it and examine the relationship together, what can be done.
Yeah, great point, Malai. Any other thoughts on that question of sort of repair?
I'll just give an example. One of the things that we have placed 34 little free libraries across Wake County, and we had in previous years, we had volunteers who've gone out and restocked these little libraries, and the host sites really didn't have to do anything. The books came to them. We solicited feedback about what changes might need to be done, and we would make those changes. But because of the climate that we're in, new budgets, new people, all the things, we've had to scale that back. And so we pulled everyone together to say, this is the situation. You know us, that we want to provide this, but here's where we are. And we were able to come up with some solutions together. And so, people, if it's a need for them, or if they are invested enough, then they will help co-create, some type of solution. And so the end result is that the people who really wanted the books now come to our office and pick them up. And, the people who, it wasn't a priority for, they just don't get them as often. And so, it just is what it is. But I think that the fact that we explain the situation and allow them to have some voice about how we handle it really helped us maintain some of those partnerships. So just a real live example of how that can how that can help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Marissa. And I think what all of you are pointing to, and thank you, Kimberly, for the question. I think it's so important to focus not on just like, how do we prepare and how do we do this, but also if it does go a way that we wish it wouldn't, what do we do? And I think sort of, it sounds like where everyone's getting to is sort of the reality of community work that, it's not linear, and we're not in control, and so as much as we wish it was in control and our plan was like step by step and we just kept moving forward, never stalled or back, the reality is that there will be stalls and there may be times where you're going back, and those are some of the like greatest opportunities to strengthen. And also, sometimes a partner, and this isn't exactly what you were getting to, Kimberly, but sometimes a partner steps back, and that's also okay. Sometimes other partners step forward, and so it's just sort of being with that. That's the joy of community work, right? Yeah, yes, Malai, we're all human. So any other thoughts before we move to another question on just sort of the work with keeping other partners engaged? Anything else there? All right. And again, if any of our participants have questions or comments, we'd love to include them in our discussion. But we do have a couple of more questions for our panelists that we can turn to here. One that I wanted to ask was, based on your experience, is there one thing that in particular that you would recommend that all coalitions do or not do during a leadership transition? And what is what is something that surprised you the most about sort of transition time?
I think I'll start here, Jenny. I think one thing that someone had mentioned already, I think it maybe have been Malai, but having those like regularly scheduled meetings is so important, and it's so easy for those to fall or to not happen. So I think like with Malai and I in the transition, we have them monthly on our schedule. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I do the same with our partners and our nonprofit partners in our school district. But if you don't have them there on the calendar, I think it's easily for a month to go by and you're like, oh, I haven't talked to them in a couple months. And so I think it's so important to have those, and it's really helped me understand better and make sure I'm connecting with them consistently, our partners and leadership.
Thanks, Josie.
Right on. I think it's the engagement piece. And so this has been said multiple times too. Stay engaged, even if it's a tickler on your email that's going to remind you to reach out. I think that's the key thing. Even if it's not a conversation, it doesn't have to be a 1-hour meeting. It's just an outreach component of staying engaged with folks and ensuring that there is some sort of link or tie that keeps coming back to ensure that support, that people are recognizing that support is there from you or your backbone organization. I think that's the one takeaway. And the other one that I just want to continuously lift up is listening, and that the engagement component means sometimes you have to stop talking and you have to listen to what's going on and just be really open and review what changes need to be made together, where are the spaces in which you can contribute to benefit to that particular community or organization.
Thanks, Malai.
I was going to just repeat something Josie said earlier. Take the time to listen and not quickly impose. As a state lead, yes, I have tons of great ideas that I think we can do as a campaign, but we need to move as a coalition versus Teresa's going to change the way we do things in North Carolina. And one person's way may not be the best way. So just really gleaning in and listening and forming those relationships, as you said, and then moving together.
Thanks, Teresa. Anything else on that question? You're all reminding me of an experience I had with a principal transition, and I was so excited because we were hoping to figure out a way to bring in some transportation from school to some after school programs. And I was like, oh great, this new person, I'm going to go in, I'm so excited to talk about this opportunity. And this would have happened even if that day hadn't been a day that one of his regular buses that just took kids from school to their homes hadn't showed up. But he was not ready to talk about busing, he was still focused on how am I going to get my school to work. I'm not ready quite yet to think about what's happening outside of the school. And it was such a lesson for me around listening, remembering people's, organizations in coalition work. Coalition work is sort of outside of the work of what each of the organizations' work is too. It's complementary, but they have their work they have to do that is a priority. And this principal was thrilled later to try to figure out how we could work together, but he wasn't ready. And so sometimes I think also giving people that time, and then also assuming good intentions. I could have left that meeting and been like, oh, he doesn't want to work with us, right? That would have been easy to do instead of sort of trying to think about how maybe this isn't the right time, but it could be later. So thank you for reminding me of my failure to go in and listen the right way. Any other sort of final actually, let me just check. It looks like we may have.
There is a question I wanted to answer live. I was typing, yes, but Y'all, I'm a slow typer, so I can't get it done the way that some people can. But I want to respond to this question that's in the QA from Susan, who says, what happens if a new person on your team is not working out? What is your approach? And so what I was stumbling to type is that what I would always recommend is to try to figure out the why first. Why is it not working out? Is it not working out because the person is maybe not informed about some of the things that can be done? Are they not informed about practices? Is it an information thing that you can provide some support to? Or is it not working out based on personality? If it's not working out based on personality, like even covering more about what that might mean. Does it mean the ways in which communication happens? Is it about the ways in which that person might lead or not lead, or need information or not lead it? I think that you have to lead with why first and try to dissect the root of the relationship before deciding on any kind of action. So that would just be my recommendation, is to try to do a little bit more digging and try to understand the why of it. Why are they not working out? And then understand what are the collective things that can be done, whether that be support through the coalition, through your work as a leader, or in trying to dissect, okay, is this a personality component that really needs to be understood?
Thank you, Malai. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to check and see if there were any final reflections from any of our panelists. Anything else that you wanted to mention? I feel like we've touched on a lot of the important themes, but
I just want to say thank you, because I'm in a weird position with this webinar today, because I kind of look at things very broadly. So I just want to thank all of the panelists too, and Josie and Marissa and Teresa for your shared leadership in this work. I think this is an important conversation, honestly, because change is going to happen. It's going to happen at the community level. It's going to happen within organizations. It's going to happen within the federal level. And we just have to continue to support each other and continue to be resilient in getting the work done for children and families. That's why we're all here.
thank you, Malai. And I want to add my thanks, and also just note that we've got a poll here for you to respond to. We'd love to get your feedback on that, because we really use that information to tailor our webinars for what we hope you'll be in, for your interest. So again, I wanted to thank everybody, and Malai, for your multiple perspectives. It's been so helpful to hear. And then Josie, Teresa, and Marissa, just your wealth of experience in your positions and in your coalitions. Thank you so much for your stories and your insights, and the reminder in particular for all of us to listen to each other as we're trying to work toward a same goal. So I am going to just remind everybody about our upcoming webinars. If you were on earlier, you heard, but just a reminder that later today we're going to have a fantastic webinar on healthy, present, and learning across sector strategies to reduce health-related absences, with attendance works and a great panel that starts at 3 Eastern Time and noon Pacific. And then next week we'll have a webinar focused on plugging the leaky pipeline for high-achieving low-income students, helping them reach their full potential, co-sponsored with the Fordham Institute. And then to wrap up the rest of the month, we'll have some holiday rebroadcasts of some of our most popular webinars from the past and important information. So in case you missed it or you want to go back and revisit, you can on the 23rd and the 30th. View these webinars, one on building the bridge, how early relational health fuels early learning and third grade reading success, as well as screens in the first 5 years, what we need to know and do. So thanks all of you for joining us today. We hope to see you again sometime soon, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks. Bye.